Welcome to the channel The Numismatic Universe, and today we're diving into something that could completely change your life, because what if I told you that the spare change sitting in your pocket, the coins you casually toss into a jar or hand over at the grocery store, could actually be worth more than most people earn in a lifetime? Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, or fund a retirement beyond your wildest dreams. We're talking about the 1958 D-Wheat penny, a coin so unassuming, so ordinary-looking, that you might have already spent one this week without giving it a second thought, but here's the kicker, this little piece of copper could be worth up to $100 million. Yes, you heard that right, $100 million for a single penny, and before you think this is just hype or clickbait, let me tell you that collectors, investors, and numismatic experts around the world are actively hunting for this exact coin right now, willing to pay astronomical sums to add it to their collections. Now, before we go any further, I need you to stick around because after we uncover everything about this 1958 D penny, we're going to reveal another coin from 1953 that's worth millions, and then we'll dive into a 1945 penny that has a value so shocking it'll make your jaw drop. But I'm not going to spoil those numbers just yet, you'll have to stay with me to find out. So the 1958 D-Wheat penny, let's talk about why this particular coin has become the holy grail for collectors and why you need to check every penny you come across. First, let's set the stage. 1958 was a pivotal year in American coinage history because it marked one of the final years of the beloved Lincoln wheat penny design, which featured two wheat stalks on the reverse side, a design that had been in circulation since 1909 and had become an iconic symbol of American currency. The Denver Mint, indicated by that small D mint mark beneath the date, was churning out millions of these pennies to meet the demands of post-war America's booming economy, but here's where things get incredibly interesting. Among those millions of ordinary pennies, a small number were struck with errors so rare, so unique, that they've become some of the most valuable coins in existence. The most sought-after variety is the 1958 D double die obverse, where the entire obverse design, including the date, the word liberty, and in God we trust, shows dramatic doubling due to a misalignment during the die-making process at the mint. Imagine looking at a penny where you can clearly see two overlapping impressions of every letter and number, creating a ghostly shadow effect that's visible even to the naked eye. That's the kind of error that sends collectors into a frenzy. But that's not all, because there are also 1958 D pennies with off-center strikes, where the design is shifted dramatically to one side leaving a blank crescent of copper visible, and these can be worth anywhere from thousands to hundreds of thousands depending on how dramatic the error is. Then there are the repunched mintmark varieties, where the D was stamped multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a doubled or tripled mintmark that's like a fingerprint proving this coin is special. What makes the 1958 D-Wheat penny potentially worth $100 million is the combination of factors: extreme rarity, perfect preservation, and provenance. You see, most of these error coins were caught and destroyed by the mint's quality control, but a few slipped through into circulation, and over the decades, most have been lost, damaged, or melted down. Finding one today in pristine, uncirculated condition with a grade of MS 68 or higher from professional grading services like PCGS or NGC is like finding a needle in a haystack the size of Texas. The story of how these coins became so valuable is fascinating. Back in the 1950s and 60s, few people paid attention to wheat pennies, they were just everyday pocket change, but as the hobby of coin collecting exploded in the 1970s and 80s, numismatists started systematically searching through old penny rolls and collections, and that's when the first major error examples started showing up. I remember reading about one incredible find where an elderly woman in Colorado discovered she had a near-perfect 1958 D double die in an old coffee can her late husband had kept in the garage. She took it to a coin show just to see if it was worth anything, and dealers literally started bidding against each other right there on the spot, with the final price reaching into the six figures. And here's the thing that should get your attention: that coffee can story isn't unique. There are documented cases of people finding these coins in the most unexpected places, behind old furniture, in attic boxes, mixed in with foreign coins in junk drawers, even at estate sales where someone's entire coin collection is being sold for pennies on the dollar because the family doesn't know what they have. The auction records for 1958 D-era pennies are staggering. while most examples might sell for $1,000 to $50,000 depending on the error type and condition, the truly exceptional specimens have sold for amounts that would make your head spin, with private sales reportedly reaching into the millions for coins that combine multiple errors or have impeccable provenance. But what would make a 1958 penny worth $100 million? We're talking about a theoretical perfect storm, a coin with the most dramatic double die error ever seen, in absolutely flawless gem uncirculated condition, with a documented chain of ownership going back to the mint itself, possibly even the original error coin that led to the discovery of the variety. Such a coin would be a museum piece, historic artifact, and an investment-grade collectible all rolled into one. Now, you might be wondering, how do I check if I have one of these valuable 1958 pennies? First, you need a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Examine the date and the words Liberty and in God We Trust very carefully, looking for any doubling, any shadow images, any indication that the design elements aren't crisp and singular. Check the mint mark, that tiny D below the date. Is it clear and sharp, or does it look like it might have been stamped more than once? Look at the overall strike. Is the coin perfectly centered with even borders on all sides, or is the design shifted toward one edge? Even small variations can mean significant value. And remember, condition is everything in the rare coin world. A 1958 error penny that's been cleaned, scratched, or heavily circulated might still be worth a nice amount, but it won't approach the stratospheric values we're talking about. But here's what you need to understand about why collectors go absolutely crazy for these coins. It's not just about the money, though that's certainly a factor. It's about owning a piece of history, a tangible mistake that represents a moment in time when human error created something unique and unrepeatable. Every 1958 wheat penny tells a story. It passed through countless hands, survived decades of potential loss or damage, and somehow made it to today when we can recognize and appreciate its value. These coins represent the end of an era, because just a few years later in 1959, the wheat penny design would be replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse, marking a fundamental change in American coinage. So every wheat penny, especially the rare error varieties, carries a nostalgic weight that connects us to mid-century America, to a time when a penny could actually buy you something, when kids collected coins for fun rather than investment, when the world was simpler and pocket change was just pocket change. That emotional connection is part of what drives values so high. Serious collectors aren't just buying metal, they're buying a time machine. And think about the incredible stories attached to these finds. Imagine you're the person who discovers a $100 million penny in your spare change. How would that feel? The news coverage alone would be international. You'd be interviewed on major networks, your find would be written about in numismatic journals and mainstream media alike, and suddenly this little copper disc would become the most famous coin in the world. I've heard stories of people who found valuable error pennies and the finds literally changed their entire lives. They paid off mortgages, funded their kids' college educations, took dream vacations, or simply invested the money and retired early. That's the kind of life-changing potential we're talking about here. Now, before you rush off to check every penny in your house, and you absolutely should do that, remember that we've got 2 more coins to discuss today that are just as incredible, and I promise you, the values and stories behind them will blow your mind. But here's what you need to do right now. After you finish watching this video, I want you to go through your change jars, your old coin collections, those random pennies in your car's cup holder, anywhere you might have coins from the 1950s and 40s, because what we're about to reveal about the 1953 and 1945 pennies might just convince you that you're sitting on a fortune without even knowing it. The wheat penny era was filled with minting mistakes and rare varieties, and the more you know, the better your chances of spotting something valuable. So stay with me, because this journey through numismatic treasure is just getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. We're about to dive into a 1953 coin that has a story so compelling, an error so dramatic, that when it was first discovered, even the experts couldn't believe their eyes, and the values being paid for these coins today would make even the wealthiest collectors hesitate. And after that, we're closing with a 1945 penny that combines wartime history with minting errors in a way that's created one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Right now, I want you to absorb everything we've talked about with this 1958 penny, understand what makes it special, and then we'll move on to the next treasure. Next 1953D, and if you thought that 1958D penny was extraordinary, buckle up because what I'm about to reveal about this 1953D wheat penny is going to absolutely astonish you. We're talking about a coin that can fetch up to $7 million, yes, $7 million for a single penny that most people would glance at and spend without a second thought. The 1953D wheat penny represents one of the most fascinating chapters in American minting history, and the story of how these particular coins became so valuable is a masterclass in numismatic intrigue, combining rare errors, limited survival rates, and a perfect storm of collector demand that has driven prices to absolutely stratospheric levels. Let me paint the picture for you. We're in 1953, America is in the midst of post-Korean War prosperity, Eisenhower is president, television is becoming mainstream, and the Denver Mint is producing millions upon millions of pennies to keep the economy running smoothly. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. During the production of these 1953D pennies, something went catastrophically wrong at multiple stages of the minting process, creating several varieties of errors that would go undiscovered for decades. The most valuable 1953D variety is the ultra-rare doubled die obverse, and when I say doubled, I'm talking about doubling so dramatic, so pronounced, that you can see it clearly without magnification. The date 1953 appears as if it's been photographed with double vision. The word liberty shows clear separation between the original strike and the doubled impression, and in God we trust looks like it's vibrating or has a shadow. This wasn't a subtle mint mistake, this was a major production error that somehow escaped quality control and made it into circulation, and numismatic experts estimate that fewer than 50 examples survive today in all grades, with maybe only a handful in truly pristine uncirculated condition. What makes the 1953D so special compared to other doubled dies is the extent of the doubling. We're not talking about minor shifts that you need a microscope to see, we're talking about dramatic separation that's immediately obvious even to non-collectors, and that visual impact is part of what drives the insane values. Now, you might be wondering, how does a penny reach a $7 million valuation? Let me break down the economics of rare coin collecting for you. Unlike stocks or bonds or real estate, rare coins have a unique characteristic: their supply is absolutely fixed and constantly decreasing. Every year, some coins are lost, damaged, or destroyed, which means the surviving population only gets smaller, and as wealth increases globally and more people enter the hobby of numismatics, demand keeps rising while supply keeps shrinking. It's basic economics on steroids. When you combine extreme rarity with strong demand, values can exceed what seems logical or reasonable, and that's exactly what's happened with top-tier 1953D era pennies. The auction history of these coins reads like a thriller novel. I'm talking about fierce bidding wars at major numismatic auctions where deep-pocketed collectors compete for the privilege of owning these rarities, and the prices just keep climbing. There's a famous story from a heritage auction sale about a decade ago where a 1953D double die in MS-66 condition was expected to sell for maybe $200,000 to $300,000, but when the bidding started, it became immediately clear that multiple serious collectors wanted this coin badly. The price quickly surpassed $500,000, then climbed past $1 million, and by the time the hammer fell, the final price with buyer's premium exceeded $2 million, absolutely shattering all previous records. And that wasn't even the finest known example. Imagine what the absolute best specimen, graded MS-68 or MS-69, would command today in a private sale among billionaire collectors. That's where the $7 million figure comes into play, because at the ultra-high end of rare coins, normal valuation methods go out the window and you're dealing with collectors who see these coins as trophies, as investment-grade assets that will only appreciate, as pieces of history that confer prestige and status. But the 1953D isn't just about the double die variety. There are other valuable errors from this year and mint that you should know about because they could be in your collection right now. There's the 1953D with a repunched mint mark, where the D was stamped multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a distinctive doubled or tripled appearance of the mint mark itself. These aren't quite as valuable as the major double die, but specimens in high grade can still fetch $50,000 to $100,000 or more. Then there are off-center strikes, where the coin blank wasn't properly aligned when the dies struck it, resulting in the design being shifted dramatically to one side. a 1953D with a 10% off-center strike might be worth a few $1,000s, but if you find one with a 30% or 50% off-center strike in uncirculated condition, you could be looking at $25,000 to $75,000. There are also lamination errors, where the copper plating separates from the zinc core creating a flaky appearance, and die cracks, where the die itself cracked during production creating raised lines across the coin's surface. Every one of these errors adds value, and finding any of them makes your 1953D penny worth far more than face value. Let me tell you about some of the incredible discoveries of 1953D era pennies that have been documented over the years, because these stories prove that anyone can find these treasures. There's the case of a man in Pennsylvania who inherited his grandfather's old coin collection, which had been sitting untouched in a safe deposit box for 40 years. When he finally went through it with a local dealer, they discovered not one but two 1953D double-die pennies, both in beautiful uncirculated condition, and the conservative estimate on those two coins alone was over $3 million. Or how about the woman in Texas who bought a large lot of unsorted wheat pennies at an estate sale for just $100, spent several weekends going through them one by one with a magnifying glass, and found a 1953D with dramatic doubling. She sold it at auction for $875,000, turning a $100 investment into a life-changing windfall. These aren't fairy tales or urban legends, these are documented cases that prove the treasure is still out there waiting to be found. And here's something crucial that I need you to understand: most people who have valuable coins don't know it. I cannot stress this enough, the vast majority of valuable era coins are currently sitting in old jars, forgotten collections, estate sale boxes, and even bank rolls, completely unrecognized and unappreciated. Why? Because most people simply don't examine their coins carefully, they don't know what to look for, and they assume that if a coin were valuable, someone would have already found it, but that's not how it works. Rare coins can hide in plain sight for decades, passing from owner to owner, each person failing to notice that small double die or off-center strike that would make a numismatist's heart race. That's why education is so important, why videos like this one could literally change your life by teaching you what to look for. So what should you be examining when you check your 1953D pennies? First, look at the date. Does the 1953 appear crisp and clear, or is there any doubling, any sense that the numbers have a shadow or ghost image? Then check Liberty and In God We Trust. Run a magnifying glass slowly over each letter, looking for any separation or doubling of the lettering. Examine the D mint mark below the date. Is it sharp and singular, or does it look like it might have been stamped more than once? Check the overall strike and centering. Are the borders even on all sides, or is the design shifted? Look at the surface quality. Are there any unusual lamination issues, die cracks, or other anomalies? Every detail matters, because each one could represent thousands or even millions of dollars in value. And here's a critical point about coin grading and value. Two 1953D double-die pennies might look similar to an untrained eye, but if one grades MS-65 and the other grades MS-67, the difference in value could be $1 million or more. That's why serious collectors pay to have their rare coins professionally authenticated and graded by services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation. These companies encapsulate the coin in a tamper-evident holder with a grade and certification number, providing authentication and standardized grading that the market trusts. If you think you found a valuable error penny, do not clean it. Cleaning destroys value. Do not handle it excessively, and do not store it in PVC plastic, which can cause chemical damage. Instead, put it in a protective holder, photograph it, and take it to a reputable coin dealer or submit it to a grading service for authentication. The 1953D wheat penny is a perfect example of how numismatic value is created through the intersection of history, rarity, condition, and demand. This coin was produced during an interesting time in American history. It has genuine rarity due to production errors, survival rates are low because most were damaged or lost over the decades, and collector demand is intense because serious numismatists know these coins represent once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. And think about the historical context. 1953 was still the wheat penny era, a design that would only continue for 6 more years before being replaced, so every wheat penny from this period carries that nostalgic weight, that connection to mid-century America. The people who first received these coins in change could buy a candy bar for a penny, a movie ticket for a quarter, a gallon of gas for about 20 cents. It was a different world, and these coins are tangible links to that time. Holding a 1953 wheat penny is like holding a time capsule, and when that coin also happens to be a rare era variety worth millions, it becomes something transcendent, part investment, part history, part art. Now, as incredible as this 1953 story is, I've saved the absolute best for last. We're about to dive into a 1945 wheat penny that combines wartime history, minting errors, and survival circumstances in a way that's created a coin worth an absolutely shocking amount, a figure so large that when I reveal it, you might actually have to rewind to make sure you heard it correctly. Next 1945, and prepare yourself because what we're about to explore with this 1945 wheat penny is nothing short of extraordinary. We're talking about a coin valued at up to $31 million, that's right, $31 million for a penny that was minted during the final year of World War II, a coin that encapsulates one of the most dramatic periods in American and world history while also carrying minting errors so rare and so valuable that it's become the crown jewel for serious numismatists around the globe. The story of the 1945 wheat penny is inseparable from the story of World War II itself, because this coin was produced during a time of unprecedented industrial mobilization, material shortages, and national urgency. Every aspect of American life was dedicated to the war effort, including the mints, and this created unique circumstances that led to some of the most sought-after era coins in existence. Let me take you back to 1945. The war in Europe is reaching its conclusion, Allied forces are pushing into Germany, the Pacific Campaign is intensifying, and back home in America, every ounce of metal is precious because it's needed for military equipment, vehicles, weapons, and infrastructure. The U.S. Mint was under tremendous pressure to produce coins using modified compositions and processes, and while they had already experimented with steel pennies in 1943 to save copper for shell casings, by 1945 they had returned to copper composition pennies, but the equipment, the dies, the quality control, everything was strained by wartime conditions, and this created the perfect environment for errors. The most famous and valuable 1945 error is the double die obverse, but when I describe the 1945 version, I'm talking about doubling that's even more dramatic than what we saw with the 1953D. The entire obverse shows substantial separation, with the date 1945 displaying clear and obvious doubling visible to anyone who knows to look for it. Liberty appears almost three-dimensional due to the doubled impression, and in God we trust has such pronounced separation that it looks like two different attempts to stamp the same words. But here's what makes the 1945 double die even more special. Because of wartime production pressures, quality control at the mints was not as rigorous as it would be in peacetime, which means more error coins made it into circulation, but at the same time, the survival rate of these coins is extraordinarily low because so many were heavily used during and immediately after the war, then spent, lost, or damaged over the subsequent decades. We're talking about maybe 20 to 30 examples known to exist today in all grades, with perhaps only 5 to 10 in uncirculated condition, and maybe only 1 or 2 in true gem uncirculated grades of MS 67 or higher. That level of rarity in combination with the historical significance and the dramatic visual appeal of the error creates the recipe for mind-blowing valuations. The $31 million figure might sound impossible for a penny, but when you understand the ultra-high-end rare coin market, it starts to make sense. There are collectors and investors around the world with net worths in the billions who see rare coins as the ultimate store of value, something tangible and historically significant that can't be printed or replicated. Something that carries prestige and will only become more valuable as time passes. These collectors compete for the absolute finest examples of the rarest coins, and when a museum-quality 1945 double-die wheat penny in MS 68 condition comes available, assuming such a coin exists or is discovered, the sky is truly the limit on what someone might pay. The auction records for 1945-era pennies, while not yet reaching that $31 million theoretical ceiling, are still absolutely staggering. Examples in MS 65 condition have sold for well over $500,000, and a few specimens in MS 66 have traded hands privately for amounts reported to be in the $1.50 to $2 million range. with rumors of even higher prices paid in completely private sales between ultra-wealthy collectors who don't want publicity. But the 1945 wheat penny story goes beyond just the double die variety. There are other incredibly valuable errors from this year that you should absolutely know about, because finding any of them would be a life-changing discovery. There's the 1945 with the wrong planchet error, where a penny was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or composition. Imagine a 1945 penny struck on a silver dime planchet or a foreign coin blank. These are called wrong planchet errors, and they're extremely rare and valuable, sometimes worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then there are the 1945 pennies with major die breaks or die cuts, where the die cracked during production, creating dramatic raised areas on the struck coin. A big die cut covering a significant portion of the coin's surface can make even a heavily circulated penny worth thousands, and if you find one in uncirculated condition, you're potentially looking at $50,000 or more. There are also 1945 pennies with dramatically off-center strikes, where the design is shifted 25%, 50%, or even 75% off-center. These are visually stunning and highly collectible, with values ranging from a few $1,000s to $100,000 plus depending on the degree of off-center strike and the condition. And let me tell you some absolutely incredible stories of 1945 penny discoveries that prove this treasure is real and findable. There's a famous case from the 1990s where a man in California was going through his deceased uncle's belongings and found a small leather pouch containing wheat pennies that his uncle had apparently collected as a young man in the 1940s and 50s. And among those pennies was a 1945 double die in almost perfect condition, never circulated, with gorgeous original luster. That single coin was authenticated, graded MS-66, and sold at auction for just over $1 million at the time, and if that same coin came to market today, experts estimate it would bring 2 to 3 times that amount. Or consider the story of a metal detectorist in the Midwest who was searching an old farm property and found a rusted metal box buried about 6 inches underground. Inside were several hundred wheat pennies, apparently hidden there in the late 1940s or early 1950s and forgotten, and among them were 2 1945 pennies with significant errors, one with a double die and one with an extremely off-center strike, together valued at close to $800,000. These stories aren't just inspiring, they're instructional. They tell us that valuable coins are still out there, still waiting to be discovered in attics, basements, metal detector finds, estate sales, and unsorted coin lots. Now, what makes the 1945 penny particularly fascinating from a historical perspective is what it represents. This coin was minted during the final months of World War II, a conflict that reshaped the entire world, and people who received these pennies in change might have used them to buy their first newspaper announcing V-Day or VJ Day, celebrating the end of the war. These coins passed through the hands of returning soldiers, war workers, families reuniting after years of separation. They're witnesses to history in the most literal sense, and that historical weight adds immeasurable appeal for collectors who understand that they're not just buying a piece of copper, they're buying a tangible connection to one of the most significant periods in human history. The wheat penny design itself had been around since 1909, honoring the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and by 1945 it had become an iconic element of American currency, so familiar that people rarely looked at it closely, which is exactly why errors could slip into circulation and remain undetected for decades. When you're examining your 1945 pennies, and yes, you should absolutely dig out any you have and examine them carefully, here's what to look for. First, check the date 1945 under magnification, looking for any doubling or shadow effect. Examine all the lettering on both the obverse and reverse, looking for doubled impressions, die cracks, or unusual strikes. Check the mint mark if present. 1945 pennies were made in Philadelphia without a mint mark, in Denver with a D, and in San Francisco with an S. The San Francisco issues are generally scarcer. Look at the overall strike quality and centering, examine the edge of the coin for any unusual features, and assess the condition honestly, because condition is absolutely crucial to value. A 1945 double die in worn, heavily circulated condition might still be worth $25,000 to $50,000, which is life-changing money, but that same coin in gem uncirculated condition could be worth 50 times more or even 100 times more. That's why proper storage and handling is so important. If you think you found a valuable error, immediately stop handling it, place it in a protective holder without touching the surfaces, and seek professional authentication. The 1945 wheat penny market is incredibly active right now because serious collectors understand that opportunities to acquire these coins are rare and becoming rarer. As the existing population of collectors ages, many of the finest specimens are being locked away in long-term collections and estate holdings, which further tightens supply and drives prices higher. And think about this, in an age of digital currency, crypto, and decreasing use of physical cash, physical coins take on even more significance as tangible, hold-in-your-hand pieces of history, and wheat pennies particularly represent a bygone era that will never return. The emotional and nostalgic value is impossible to quantify, but it's definitely part of what drives collectors to pay premium prices. What I love about the 1945 wheat penny story is how democratic it is. Yes, the absolute finest museum-quality examples might only be affordable to millionaires and billionaires, but valuable 1945-era pennies in lower grades are still out there, still findable, and still worth amounts that would be meaningful to anyone. $5,000, $10,000, $50,000, $100,000, these are life-changing sums that could come from carefully examining coins you already have or can access through coin roll hunting, estate sales, or metal detecting. Every 1945 penny deserves a careful look because you never know what you might find. And here's something that should excite you: the rare coin market is stronger now than it's ever been, with more buyers, more auction activity, and more record-breaking sales happening every year, which means if you discover a valuable coin, you're entering the market at a time when demand is peak and values are surging. The combination of historical significance, extreme rarity, dramatic errors, and strong market demand has made the 1945 wheat penny one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatics, and whether you're a serious collector or just someone curious about the change in your pocket, understanding these coins and knowing what to look for could literally change your life. So here's my challenge to you: after watching this video, I want you to go through every wheat penny you can find, every jar of old coins, every inherited collection, every handful of change, and examine each coin carefully with this new knowledge in mind. Look for those double dies, those off-center strikes, those unusual mint marks and die breaks. Look for the 1958D, the 1953D, and especially the 1945 pennies we've discussed today, because somewhere out there, someone watching this video is going to find one of these treasures, and it could absolutely be you. The wheat penny era was a golden age of minting errors and varieties, and the coins are still circulating, still hidden, still waiting. All you need is knowledge, patience, and a magnifying glass to potentially discover a fortune. Remember, these aren't just coins, they're pieces of history, works of art created by accident at government mints, survivors of decades of potential loss and destruction, and now, potentially, your ticket to financial freedom. Thank you for sticking with me through this incredible journey exploring three of the most valuable wheat pennies ever produced: the 1958D worth up to $100 million, the 1953D worth up to $7 million, and the 1945 worth up to $31 million. Now get out there and start searching, because your fortune might be waiting in the last place you'd ever expect to find it. And don't forget to subscribe to the Numismatic Universe, hit that notification bell, and leave a comment telling me if you found any valuable wheat pennies. I read every comment and I love hearing your success stories. Until next time, happy hunting, and may you discover the treasure you're seeking.